get some small wins, get some wins that they want. Like, ask your team, what's a win for you?
I can weaponize all of these ideas for good, and I can become a better communicator. A lot of the best leaders I've ever worked for and with are those that truly care about their people. We look at the result of a decision and we say, if it was a good result, it was a good decision. If it was a bad result, it was a bad decision.
Guys, Bobby Powers is back. So bobbypowers.com, right? That's the website, Bobby.
bobbypowers.com, you got it.
Yeah, it's so awesome. And something's amazing about Bobby that we learned in the last episode. So I encourage everybody to listen to that one. But this is something totally separate. So you don't have to listen to that one to do this one. If you love books, though, this is it. How many books do you read a year?
Over 70 a year.
Yeah. And you've done that for how long?
Yeah, about a decade or more. Yeah. So I went and tallied up, and over the last 15 years, I've done over 1,000 books. So yeah, it's been quite a few stacks of books the last few years.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy, man. That's like, just to think about, I mean, I read a lot. I think I read a lot of books, but I probably only read 30 maybe a year, maybe 40. I may get up there. It depends on the book. Like I just read Napoleon because we went to Paris, and I think
right? Yeah.
that should count like 4 books.
I'll give you credit for 4 books, Jason. You can take it.
Yeah, we need like a Bobby Powers credit book. Yeah, you should do the Bobby Powers book club. That would be awesome. But I want to talk to people. So I had to go through, I highlight some of my books I don't. But I had to go through and use AI to kind of help me remember some of because we picked our 10 best books, each of us, for leadership.
Yeah.
We'll do one for self-help later or biographies, because I know you read a lot of different kinds, and I do too. But these are 10 leadership books that's going to help you. And that's kind of what I picked. My stack was ones that kind of had a huge input on me.
Yeah.
And then also made me a better leader. And then I also made it ratings, because there's so many to pick from. I also made it ratings like how, if they grabbed this book, could it help them today? So that's kind of how I did it. But I want to get into, before we get into each of the books, I want to get into your system. How do you remember books? What do you do as far as that goes, like with highlighting and all that?
Yeah. So I've nerded out on this whole system with multiple friends. I've gotten a lot of people to adopt this, but I take copious book notes. And so for the longest time growing up, I was hesitant to blemish a book with any writing in it. It just felt like a wrong thing to do. It felt sacred, And then I realized I would actually remember way more from my books if I interacted with them.
Right.
And so I don't even go the pencil route. I actually pull out a pen and I go and I mark them up to crap. And so I have book notes all over the place in the margins. I use the back cover of every book as basically like my 1-page cheat sheet on the book. So as I was prepping for this discussion, thinking about what are 10 of the books that have most influenced me for leadership, I just grabbed them off my shelf and I pop them open. And in the back of every book, I have my 1-page cheat sheet. And so I can quickly go and remind myself, oh yeah, these were the big things from that book. So that helps me out a ton just for remembering the books, but it also helps me because I write a lot about books. So on my Substack, Leader and Learner, I write about a lot of book recommendations. I write book reviews on my website. And so as I'm going through putting together a review or trying to distill the insights into a training that I give at work or anything else,
Right.
I just go to my 1-page cheat sheet, and it's been super, super helpful.
Yeah, that's so cool. And then you use Notion too, right?
Yeah, so I actually use a tool called Obsidian that's basically like
that's right.
similar
Yeah.
to Notion.
But it's more geeky, right?
It's more geeky. Yeah, it looks more like dev code kind of, but
Yeah.
I'm not a developer at all. I don't do coding, but it just has that skin and feel to it. And Obsidian is where I save my book notes as far as like permanent notes I can reference later, and I can tag and see how they interrelate.
So you could type in like, we'll use, for instance, you could type in teamwork, and then all your notes would pop up under teamwork.
100%. And as you can imagine from someone who writes just like I do, if you're writing an article about teamwork or delegation or anything, and you can just put in a tag and pull up all of your favorite quotes, stories from my career, data, like research projects that I've saved in there, all that kind of stuff. The article helps write itself a lot more because then you have all this at your fingertips. So Obsidian has just been a game changer for me and has been very helpful.
That's so awesome, bro, because it's like whenever you look at, like legacy or look at like what's going to happen, especially like you'll be able to have a Bobby Powers AI agent, in the future that'll be a leadership agent. And then people be able to go on your website and, they can pay or whatever and, go through your notes and do that. I've been looking at that, for like a leadership AI agent. So it's really interesting, the technology that's coming in, even though we're super old school. I just did a podcast with the guy on doing the hybrid model for writing a book.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So, because I'm interested, because it's self-aware leader. So I want to make even though John Maxwell made a self-aware leader book, I want to make a self-aware leader book. And so I'm like, if I want to know about it, then I always just bring people on the podcast. So it was really cool. One of the things that he said, and I think is you just don't think about it, is this is your best business card.
Yeah. Right.
Because not everybody can say that they're an author. So, if you just hand out, he's like, just even if you don't sell a lot of books, he has a way to get on the Amazon bestsellers and all that. But even if it doesn't, just being able to hand your book to somebody as a leader is amazing.
Well, it's huge. Yeah. And that definitely is the kind of thing that is a calling card to get you public speaking gigs or coaching or consulting or anything else you're trying to do.
Yeah. And he said with Amazon print on demand, you can buy one or you could buy 200. We have the hard copy colored thing and it's $3.20.
Wow. Yeah. That's a
So
steal.
like, why not just give that out everywhere you go? He goes, when you do a speaking gig, put that in with the pricing to say, hey, if you guys have a swag bag, I can get you a special deal, for the book. And then everybody gets a free book, in the swag. There was just, dude, we did a whole hour. So you'll have to listen to it. It's really amazing. It just made me more pumped up to finish my book,
Yeah.
Are you writing a book or have you ever thought of writing one?
I am. Yeah. So I'm halfway through writing a book for first-time managers. And so, yeah, the entire process is so weird going through as a first-time author trying to figure out, because you and I obviously have been reading books for years, but it's so different to be on the other side of the fold, trying to figure out how does the publishing world operate.
Right.
And the craziest thing about it is that the tough thing isn't writing the book, it's actually selling the book, publishing the book.
Yes.
That's way harder. And so the book itself has been coming along really well, but then you start talking about like, how do I find the right publisher, the right agent? All of that stuff takes a little bit more time.
Yeah, he was really interesting. Like one of the things that he said, the reason he liked the hybrid model is because you can buy your own ISBN number and own it.
Okay. Yeah.
So if you go with a publisher, and nowadays publishers don't do a lot for you, he was talking about, but if you go with a publisher, they own the ISBN and they own the rights to your book, So I thought that was interesting. So, but let's get into the books. So I want you to start, if you don't mind, go first, and then we'll just go back and forth. I think that'll be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. So one book that I just recently stumbled upon that I don't know how I hadn't heard about for years is a book called 6 Thinking Hats by Edward de Bono.
So yeah.
It's awesome. Yeah, I found it at Tattered Covered Books in Denver. I was there for a conference. I popped into this bookstore and this was in the used book section, and I picked it up and it looked somewhat familiar, but I hadn't heard anyone talk about this book before. And this book is about how to make better decisions. And specifically, he talks through 6 different ways of framing a decision, 6 thinking hats you can use to evaluate what should I do in a business decision. And I've now taught this process to our managers at our company. So I'm the director of learning and development for a company called Jitasa. And so I've trained a lot of our US managers on how to do this. But basically, it's just a framework of you put on the white hat as a team if you want to view what is the information and data that we have that we need to bring to bear on this decision. The red hat that he talks about is what are the feelings and emotions that you have about this? You can acknowledge if I'm scared about this or I'm worried, I don't have data behind it, but my gut tells me I'm worried about changing our pricing. And I don't know if we should do that or not. So he walks through these 6 different frames, and it's everything from like what could go right, which is the yellow hat in his parlance, to what could go wrong, which is his black hat. And so it's basically a process that you can take any team through, or you can use it yourself to try to evaluate a decision from 6 different angles. And what I love about this is he talks about how, especially in the Western world for business, we are way too heavily focused on argument, debating and trying to like win that my idea is better than Jason's idea.
Right.
And this process is all about everybody puts on the hats at the same time. So if you and I were trying to decide something for like launching a business together, we would both put on the white hat at the same time and say, what data do we have, Jason?
Right.
How should we approach this? Then we would put on the next hat. And so it's basically a way of using what he calls parallel thinking that you walk through together and you brainstorm together rather than arguing against each other. And I love that.
Yeah, because it's most of the time people all have different types of hat based off their personalities. They're automatically wearing some type of hat.
Yeah, he talks about how all of us really have all 6 of these modes within us, and we might gravitate toward using one or the other. There are people that might tend to be pessimistic or the optimistic big idea people, but
Right.
that it's most powerful if everyone actually puts these on at the same time and says, okay, I'm going to actually take a frame of mind of being really positive. What could come out of this that's actually really good?
What excited you to teach it to others? Like what was the philosophy behind why you got so excited to teach it to someone else?
Yeah, the biggest thing is I love having shared language. So I think for any small team, for any big company, if you have shared language you can use, that you have a reference point of like, hey, we're being too red hat right now. That means we're being too emotional.
Right.
If I can throw that out in a few words and people know, okay, yeah, we're being too red hat, and there's this context built up, there's this shared language, it's a really powerful tool to be more efficient and effective in meetings, in decisions, and just in trying to build a team together. So that was really why I got so excited about it.
Yeah, it also creates psychological safety because you're not pinpointing onto one person or a group of
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, exactly. It creates a lot of safety because then as a team, you're saying, we're going to actually give space for everybody to say, what are you scared about? We're going to give space to say, what do you hate about this idea? What do you love about this idea? What other big ideas do you have about this? So you're creating space and safety for people to be positive or negative, and you're encouraging people to step outside their normal frame.
Yeah, that's so good, bro. Did you have anything else on it before we get on to the next one? Like, were there any takeaways that could really help someone?
Yeah, really the biggest thing would be if this is the kind of model that you think might be helpful for you, I try to distill it just like I do for all the books I read. I try to distill it into a short article. And so we can share that in the show notes of just basically the 5-minute version of it. But I think just using it as a personal practice of recognizing when you're being emotional.
Yes.
That's the biggest mistake that people tend to make is I get stubborn, I get kind of charged up about like, I feel a certain way about this thing. So that would be my biggest takeaway is recognize when you're being too emotional about a decision, take off that red hat, and then step into, okay, what does the data say? What do I actually need to view to be more comfortable about what we do next?
Yeah, that's so good. And one of the things I learned from somebody I just had on the podcast here recently is she said, emotions are just data anyways.
I like that. Yeah.
It is really, if you think about it. Well, cool. So I'm going to get into mine. This is my first one. I think the E word, execution,
Yeah.
is to me a superpower that a lot of managers and a lot of leaders, even on the C-suite side of things, don't have. And I don't know if you've read this or heard of this, the 4 disciplines of execution.
I've heard of it. I picked up a copy, but I still haven't read it. So this is encouraging me to check it out.
This is one of my favorite books. So
Okay, sweet.
I think it's because it has a super simple, repeatable, strategic formula. And so and of course, obviously it would have to be brilliantly written because it's about execution. So you wouldn't want it to have just, all philosophy and kind of, get into why you should have execution, but this kind of does more of the like, what is it and how does it work? So, and real quick, there's a 4DX framework. And the first one is focus on the wildly important goals. It's called WIGS. And that makes the most significant difference.
Yeah.
One of the things that I really liked about this book too was it gets into kind of going through the bullshit of like, you're focusing on way too many things. And you know this when you teach managers all the time. So what ends up happening when you take your focus and you put it on a bunch of different things and you're shotgunning a bunch of different stuff, then the resources get way too thin. And then there's no strategic progress. You've seen that. How many times have you seen that?
Oh, a ton. Yeah, it actually connects to one of my favorite business quotes is put more wood behind fewer arrows. Take fewer shots, but put more wood behind them and more effort.
Yeah, that's so good. And then discipline number 2 is act on the lead measures. So this was really good because a lot of us follow up with lag measures like KPIs, not lead measures, but lag measures. So a lot of us are looking at revenue, what was profit and loss at the end of the month, what is the customer satisfaction? When we look at data, a lot of it is lagging. So he's like, if you really want to execute, one of the things you have to look at is what is directly influencing your teams. Like the number of customer follow-up calls for sales, or preventive maintenance for production efficiency. Looking at things that allow teams to see immediate impact.
Yeah.
And not just see immediate impact, but what are the things that we can focus on that allows us to see immediate impact from our efforts?
Yeah.
And then what he says that does is it fosters this sense of control and then togetherness and contribution, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. And then number 3, because there's just 4 of them, so I'll go through these quick, but keep a compelling scoreboard. A simple, high, super visible scoreboard, whether you've got to, put a huge whiteboard up, whatever it is. And he says think of it as a tool that allows people to understand at a glance if they're winning or losing. So if we're not looking at lag measures, but we're looking at lead measures, I want to be able to look really quick and see what's going on. Like, do I need to perform better? And then what motivates each of your teams? And that's where he gets into having the teams help you design their own scoreboards so that they claim ownership and commitment. So I thought that was a really good. And then the 4th discipline, and then I'll hand it over to you, is create a cadence of accountability. This I think for a lot of leaders, they're afraid that they're going to be an asshole if they hold people accountability. Now, he talks about a cadence of accountability. Now, I like the word cadence because that dictates a reoccurring cycle of accountability. We've talked about coaching a lot, and one of my books I have is a coaching book in here in my pile, but I think you just wrote about it or you mentioned it on your
The Coaching Habit?
Yes.
It's in my pile too, so we'll have a good conversation about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be really good. So that's funny. We both put it in there. But when you review the scoreboard and you see the successes and the failures, then you can have them as a team learn together. And this consistent rhythm gets progress and reinforces team responsibility, because a lot of people look at it as like, well, that's the leader's problem. That's not our problem. He's wanting us to do these things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love the shared accountability model there of that the team's getting to choose some of their own scorecard metrics. Because if they have buy-in like that, just like you said, the ownership is entirely different than if you're just telling people what to do.
Yeah, and what I thought was cool with that part is he said when they get a few wins under their belt, then morale, and he believes, that results drive execution. So a lot of people say, you need to execute and then you get results. And he's like, no, reverse that. He's like, get some small wins, get some wins that they want. Like, ask your team, what's a win for you? They're not going to, I've done this a lot of times and it's so funny. They kind of go better than what I thought it was going to go.
Yeah.
Or they have more responsibility than I thought that it was going to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's awesome.
So this is kind of an operating system on how to execute. If you feel stuck, it's really good. So what's yours, bro?
All right. Well, first, I clearly need to check out the book. I need to reprioritize my reading list now because that sounds awesome. My next one, I'm guessing you've probably heard of this one.
Yeah,
Wins to Stick by Chip and Dan Heath. So this is basically my communication Bible. I love this book for so many reasons. One of the reasons is that the 2 guys that wrote it, Chip and Dan, one of them is a psychology professor. The other one is a marketing expert. And so they're talking about how to make ideas stick in the mind of an audience. And they're approaching it from both a business lens, like marketing, and they're also approaching it from a psychology lens. I love the fusion of those two because the entire book is just filled with stories upon stories of really memorable concepts of how to make an idea stick. And they walk through a few different examples of you can present this kind of idea in a board meeting or in an ad that you're pitching for your company. You could present it in this way, or you could present it in this way.
Right.
And they point out the difference between those two and what makes us remember ideas. So they have a whole formula in there of like what makes for sticky ideas. I won't go through the whole thing, but really what jumped out to me is it's all story driven. It's all how do you take data that you want people to remember and you wrap that within a story. And that story basically becomes the Trojan horse that's delivering the data that you want to deliver. And I love that model.
Yes, that's so good, bro. What do you feel like on that book specifically? Like, because that's your second book you pointed up. Like, did it motivate you? Because when I read it, it was kind of like a joyful book. I
Yeah.
don't like
Yeah.
I think happy is cool, but joyful's more deep, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Well, so it gave me a lot of hope and excitement for what I could be able to do with my messages. And if you're hearing this and you're thinking like, well, I'm not a marketer. Yeah, I'm not a marketer either. I don't do
Mhm.
marketing. I don't know, need to package ideas for advertisements or something. But every one of us should take hope in knowing we can improve our communication. Specifically, if you're a teacher, you're a trainer, you're a politician, you're a pastor, whatever you are,
Right.
you're trying to communicate ideas and you want people to probably remember what you had to say. And
Yes.
so I read this book thinking, man, I actually feel like I can use this. I can weaponize all of these ideas for good and I can become a better communicator. So it completely changed me as a public speaker. It changed me as a leader and it gave me a lot more confidence for how I can craft messages in a compelling way.
Yeah, it's almost a like you said with the psychology and the marketing, it's almost it's almost like this perfect little formula that you can use. So if you can put it into your website, and they talk about that in the book, I remember it. I mean, it's the stickiness. I love the
Yeah.
cover too. The orange with the duct tape is so perfect.
It is. Yeah, it really stands out on the shelf too. So yeah, Made to Stick, Chip and Dan Heath. Love that book.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, this one is probably, if I had to say, if somebody was running a company or this is kind of more, maybe not for new managers, maybe more like a CEO, C-suite type person. But if I had to give one book to them, I would give this. And I don't know if you've read this, The Fifth Discipline.
I've heard of it. I haven't read it.
It's old.
Yeah.
It's not like super old, but I think this book changed my life. Like literally, this showed me, like, got me really interested in understanding leadership as a philosophy.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Peter Singh, I think, but he redefines, I'm going to set it right here so everybody can see it. He redefines leadership as not just leadership, but the organization in and of itself. He makes the organization alive. Obviously it has humans in it, but his whole premise is making it a learning organization. And not just learning, but, because I love evolutionary psychology, but it's more of like this continuous adaptation and innovation. If you can adapt and innovate, especially now when there's so much uncertainty in the world and so much change happening, if you're good at that, I mean, could you imagine an organization? There are a lot of them that are out there. I'm reminded of, I just watched this morning, the CEO of Robinhood.
Oh,
He's
okay. Yeah.
becoming, the little app that everybody was like, oh yeah, I have it on my phone, and now he's becoming, he's worth $60 billion. And they said that he'll probably be the number one investment over Charles Schwab, over all of them, in 10, 15 years. He's getting mortgages on there. Like the list goes on and he just keeps adapting and innovating constantly
Yeah.
over and over and over again. And this is when you watch him interact with his employees, because I always like to watch how CEOs interact with employees. It's a learning organization. He's just constantly wanting, Vladimir is his name, but he's just constantly wanting to learn. Did you read this book or do you have it?
No, I don't have it. No, it was something one of my grad school professors talked about and said that it was really good and it stood out to me, but I haven't bought it yet.
Yeah, the key takeaways, I'll go to these real quick. Systems thinking. So when you can begin to understand the interconnectedness of various components within an organization, I think it allows you to kind of see when things are delayed or when there's consequences to short-term action. So this kind of gives you more of like a holistic view. Especially for solving like super complex problems, this gets heavy into that. It doesn't shy away from that. This book does not shy away from anything. And then number two, of course, is personal mastery. The discipline encourages continuous self-improvement, learning. So he would not hire somebody unless he talks about this during their time. It's like, hey, we only hire people that are into self-improvement, into learning. What's the last book you read?
Yeah.
So he kind of goes into that. And if somebody can't say those things, then he's like, well, the company's not for you, in a nice way.
Yeah.
But it's this whole idea of personal mastery among employees. So, and then what does that look like? Giving budget towards it. I mean, obviously you work for a company where they're doing that, with you. And then mental models, which I love. Charlie Munger turned me on to mental models.
Yeah.
And he gets into that, so because mental models are really good because it opens up new possibilities. And it causes a lot of times our biases And because it's so interesting, they've done studies on this, like what's your hunch or what's the bias? What's the percentage that you're right in that, you know? And I think it's like 30, 40%.
Yeah, probably comically low, right?
And then building a shared vision. I won't get into that too heavy, but he gets into that. That sounds boring, but the way that he talks about vision, having compliance to the point of each employee has true dedication.
Yeah.
Like you can walk up to the employee and ask them what's the vision, and they would be able to articulate it very clearly. Not just a vision for the company in the macro, but a vision for their team, for themselves. So he gets pretty granular with that. And, what you're really good at, and the last one is team learning. This is collective intelligence is what he calls it. So it encourages teams to move beyond the individual perspective. And what does it, like your first book, what does it look like in thinking together? What does a collaborate environment look like? And then what is collective wisdom? And then how valuable is collective wisdom? When you pull all those pieces and parts together, it's like a car has 100,000 parts on it, and they all have to work perfectly. And then you hop in and there you go. But dude, this book, for being so old, I was like, what the hell? How is this so? It's almost like a leadership spiritual text, kind of,
Yeah.
if you want to get into it that way. So
Oh, that's great. It's a good selling point.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites by far. What's your third book?
Next one for me is You're Not Listening by Kate Murphy.
You just had this one on the.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Didn't you just have this listed on your? I saw it on there.
Yeah, I wrote about this recently. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wrote about it on a list of some of my favorite books for things like coaching and asking questions. And this is definitely in that camp. So I firmly believe that to be a good listener, or to be a good leader, you have to be a great listener. And so our society doesn't place a lot of emphasis on that component of leadership, though. We talk a lot about you got to be a good speaker. You've got to be charismatic. You have to be this person that's big, bold, out in front. But really, a lot of the best leaders I've ever worked for and with are those that truly care about their people. They listen to their teams and they're attuned to what the organization needs. One of the things that really jumped out to me from this book is that Kate Murphy, the author, is actually a journalist. And so as part of her job, she gets to interview all these millionaires and big, pro athletes and celebrities. And she said that she has been floored time and again that after one of her interviews with these bigwig people, sometimes they'll come up to her afterward and they'll say, you know what? It felt so good for you to listen to me deeply, for you to ask thoughtful questions. I haven't had anyone do that in my life in years. And it just floored her that these people that we revere so highly, like, a millionaire or LeBron James or Beyonce or whoever it is, she's interviewing these bigwig people and they feel like no one ever listens to them, which is just mind blowing to me that even these people feel like that.
Well,
So I think
always probably telling them.
yeah, everyone's probably trying to pitch them things, but you would think that they would also be commanding a room with their presence. And yet they still feel like people aren't listening to them. And so she talks in this book about how good listening isn't avoiding the negative things. Like we think of like, oh, well, I shouldn't be on my cell phone when I'm talking to Jason, or I shouldn't be, like pulling up email when I'm on a Zoom call. She said, good listening isn't avoiding the bad stuff. It's actually doing all of these good behaviors. Like she talks a lot about asking thoughtful questions and kind of gets into the realm of coaching, like one of the next books we'll talk about here, of how do you ask really calibrated questions that are directly based on what that person was just sharing. And that's the truest way of you selflessly listening to them is you're so dialed in, you know exactly what they're talking about, and you ask a follow-up question to have them share more.
That's so good. What do you think, like for you personally, what was the big like aha from that book?
Yeah, one of the things is that I tend to listen and be ready with a response if I want to sound smart. I want to jump in and add value. I want to give a book recommendation. I want to tell them about this cool podcast that relates to what they talked about. And she talks about how that's just a natural feeling for all of us to have of wanting to jump in and add value, but we really have to bridle that in order to be better communicators. And so what I learned coming out of it is it's okay to be like the nerdy guy that wants to give book recommendations,
Right.
podcasts, but I can't lead with that in my first response to someone. I need to ask about what they're doing instead of stealing the spotlight onto me. And so it prompted me to just linger with the spotlight on them for just a little bit longer before I divert to something else that I wanted to talk about that's connected.
Yeah, that's so good, bro. That's when I saw when I saw that on there, I was like, "Ooh, I got to buy that," because that's what I do on my podcast.
Yeah.
So the more that I could listen, the better. With my guest. That right. I saw that on your because I always read your posts and stuff on Substack, which is what? Let's plug it right now.
Yeah, Leader and Learner publication on Substack. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good, guys. Or you can go on mine, and I'm always retweeting it or whatever you call it. I don't know. Is it like a re-sub or what do you call that?
I think they call it Restack. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
Restacks.
Yeah, just your restack. So I have one. I was in the Marine Corps, so I'm going to have military books, because I'm just a partial. Yeah, this is Jocko. It's a whole different style of leadership, but it's really not. And what a lot of people think of when they think of, and he talks about this over and over, especially in the book. He was SEAL teams, high up in the SEAL teams. And then he eventually was doing the training for the SEALs teams and high up officer and everything else. And just worked his way and got, super high up in the Navy SEALs. So like if you look him up, Jocko Willink, it's his name, you'll see he's like this big jacked, older Navy SEAL guy. He surfs, does jujitsu, and lifts weights 7 days a week. So just crazy.
And you can tell by seeing any picture of him, you can tell the guy's huge. Yeah.
But this is what I really was, and a lot of people don't understand this about the military, is it's decentralized. It's taught. The leaders are taught not to give commands or orders. So you always, especially in battlefield situations, you always get the team together and then they do probably 90 to 95% of the talking and the planning. And the leader just says, hey, touch base with me and we'll go over it and then kind of add some insight. But what I really liked about this book is if you like no nonsense, of course, it's written from a Navy SEAL. But one of his things he says is there's no bad teams, only bad leaders. So I think that's really good because he would say he would wonder why being in charge of the SEAL teams, he would be like, and I'm just going to make numbers up. Why is SEAL Team 2 so bad, but then SEAL Team 5 is amazing? And it always bent back to the leader. And he had some key takeaways just real quick. One is the book is called Extreme Ownership. That means you take full accountability for everything. Instead of blaming, we always blame or play the victim. Oh, I have a horrible boss. Well, how can you make him not horrible? What can you do? Can you, like he talks about in the book, which is so good, it's like, find what he loves, find the things that he likes, find something. There's got to be something. Take responsibility, like full ownership, or take full responsibility and leave, if he's not that good. And then identifying the roles and the problems and then focus on what is the solution? And then my execution book, take decisive action. That's their thing. Check your ego. He talks about this big time. Humility is a big thing in the SEAL teams and in the military, which people think guys have big egos and stuff like that. There's a whole, because when I was in the Marine Corps, there's a whole spirit of corps and all these different things. But at the end of the day, whenever you're planning and training and doing all that, no one really has rank in those moments. Everybody, you want input. So because the machine gunner may have a different conversation, than the first lieutenant that's the command, so he may have no idea. Or you've had somebody who's had multiple deployments and been on battlefields, you want his stories, so especially if it's a team that's never been, anywhere. So, and then prioritize and execute. This is something in high pressure environments. Clearly identify the critical tasks. This has helped me more than anything, bro, with this one was you can pivot and it not be so devastating. Making a decision is just a pivot. You can always on the battlefield, it's we're going to go do this. And then next thing you know, no, we got to do field of fire and do this way because we're getting nailed. So he's we were really adaptable to be able to shift our plans.
Yeah.
Where I think a lot of times we get so worried and so freaked out when something bad happens or we have, we can't handle being able to adapt, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then decentralized command, which I talked about, keep things simple with your team. He's you're doing too much, especially if people in the military like us, we had to keep it simple, stupid, the KISS method,
Yeah.
Which I think we kind of like to use the big words, if that makes sense. And then lead by example, which he does. I mean, he's the epitome of what a Navy SEAL would be and is. And then one of his famous quotes, and I have one of his t-shirts, is discipline equals freedom.
I love that.
So when you are in a discipline mode and you're making decisions, you're doing your personal habits, you've got work routines going, it's really easy when precision is happening in your personal life and in your life, effectiveness is the outcome.
Yeah.
So and it creates a lot of strategic flexibility. He gets into that because a lot of people wouldn't. But I think like if somebody wants like a simple, the book's not simple, but if you want like simple, get to the point, I want to be a good leader, this is a great book. And it's opposite of what people think.
Yeah. Yeah. Helpful book. I referenced that in an article, and his TED Talk and everything as well is fantastic.
Uh-huh.
Really, really helpful. And the stories that he shares about being in these intense situations and what it looks like to take extreme ownership, I learned a lot from that.
Yeah, it's so good. And he has a podcast, and it's like 3-4 hours long, and it's mostly military. I listen to it sometimes when I'm in the mood because some of it can be pretty intense.
Yeah.
But I've read a lot of military biographies. I have a bunch of bookcases all around me right now, like George Marshall. His favorite book, like his Bible, is called About Face. And he said that's the number one leadership book. It's a really thick book, and it's from a colonel from Vietnam. And he wrote like how he trained his troops, what they went through, everything. And Jocko said, I've learned everything from that book. So everything he's teaching is from this. So if you want to get like even more deep into this, but Jocko has like, how many books does he have out now? He's got a bunch, I think.
Yeah. He's got at least a couple. That guy blew up a few years ago, and it seems like he's everywhere now.
Yeah, he's doing a lot of leadership training and stuff like that. So what's your book?
Yeah. So next one, I'm sure you're no stranger to this, Crucial Conversations.
Yeah, I tried to find that when I couldn't find it. That is an amazing book.
Yeah, I love this. It's one that I hesitated to even put in my stack for this chat because it's so well known, but it lives up to everything that you've heard about the book. So really, really powerful book. The most practical takeaway from it that I had is just the idea that when you're having a tough conversation with someone, you're about to share feedback, you're having a debate, it's really tempting to villainize the other person. And we tell these villain stories in all kinds of ways of like, oh, well, Jason just has it out for me. He just doesn't like me, whatever the thing is, It's tempting to say that about coworkers, family members, friends, whoever in tough situations. We forget that this is a human, and we tell a negative villain story about them. So what the authors encourage you to do instead is to ask yourself one simple, powerful question. That's, why would a reasonable, rational, and decent person do what this person is doing? And I have to remind myself of that question sometimes. If I'm in the heat of the moment for something, I have to remind myself, why would a reasonable, rational, and decent person do what X person is doing? And that helps reframe for me that, you know what, they're a good person. I know they're smart. I've maybe worked with them for a long time. We're just on different sides for this thing, fighting for different opinions. And it's not that they're dumb. It's not that they're lazy. It's not that they're bad. They're not a villain. No, we have different perspectives. And this question helps me humble myself to try to be curious about what is their perspective. So the whole book is about feedback, sharing tough messages, and having disagreement in a way that feels a little bit more agreeable. And I love the author's perspective on this. They say that in general, when we're having any kind of tough conversation, we tend to err on the side of making a sucker's choice. We think either I clam up and I don't say anything and this stays bad forever, or I speak up and I ruin the relationship. And that's a sucker's choice because we're pitting it as these are the only two options. But if we take ownership, going back to your Jocko point, you take ownership of the situation, you say, actually, there are many different outcomes here. I'm going to speak up and I'm going to do it in a way that is sensitive to their needs. I'm going to speak up and I'm not going to ruin the relationship. I'm going to share freely this feedback. And I think that will actually build our rapport, not destroy it. So this is a book I've read multiple times. I go back to a lot, but highly, highly recommend this one.
Isn't there a story in there where there's a woman and she's a small business owner, and then she hires her friend, and then her friend keeps showing up late to work.
Yeah.
And then, dude, that blew my mind when I read this story. They said, you can have the conversation and be like, I don't know why you're just late all the time and this and that and blah, blah, blah. You can have that conversation with your friend, or this is the conversation that you have is, I need to have a conversation with you because here's the real reason why is, I don't care about you showing up late. What's happening is you're disrespecting me. You're using your friendship to be able to get away with something, where I'm actually your boss. And you shared this when you talked about on our podcast when you had to talk to your friends.
Yeah.
And share, like you didn't realize you're going to get, be the boss's boss, and then you had to have a conversation with them, and it so reframes everything. Because if you're a reasonable, rational person, like you said, I would be like, fuck, I am taking advantage of the friendship and showing up late, you know?
Yeah, and what I love about this book is they also talk about how part of a feedback conversation should be asking questions, should be saying, "Oh, what is the reason you're showing up late?" Bring data and say, "You've shown up late 3 out of the last 4 work days that we've had. What's the reason
Mhm.
for that?" And if you ask those questions and you assume positive intent in the situation, you might even find out that, well, they don't have a car right now. Their car's in the shop for a couple weeks. You might find out they've been walking to work or public transit got rerouted.
Mhm.
You don't know what the situation is unless you ask about it. So it's really this combined philosophy of, just like you were saying, you present candid information, like candidly, here's what's going on. I'm going to be direct with what I've observed. And yet also I'm going to ask questions and I'm going
Mm.
to invite you into this conversation because it really should be a two-way conversation.
Right.
It shouldn't be me just lighting someone up.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That's so good. That I was looking for that book, bro. There's also the other one. It's a green one.
Influencer, or
Yeah. There's that. Well, I think they have like 3 books. They probably have more than that,
they've
but
got a few. Yeah. They've got Crucial Accountability as well as another one. Yeah.
there's crucial conversations. Isn't there a crucial confrontations? I think
They
there's one.
renamed it to Crucial Accountability because they realized that that framing was not ideal and kind of went against their ethos. So same book as Crucial Accountability.
Yeah, those are must haves. Like if you're, especially if you're a new manager and you want to be able to have a conversation with someone, you got to read that. Also, yeah, this guy I love. He's super cool. He lives the lifestyle that I want to live, and that's Richard Coach. I
Yeah.
don't know if he had a book. He has a book called The Lords of Strategy. So if you really kind of want to know who he is as a person, he's like this. He lives this. Like he only does the 20% that creates 80% of the work. You know, I mean, he took this principle. He's got a ton of these. This is living the 80-20 way, which I would start off with this one, you know, because this one's really, really good as far as like letting it kind of gets a philosophical. But if you want to know like strategy, the Lords of Strategy, that is an amazing book. But he's written like 10 or 15 books. He just writes books and invests in, he uses the 80-20 principle to invest in companies, and he's making millions and millions of dollars. And he does like like he rides his bike. He's from like England, you know, area, but he does really simple, like a really simple life. It's just really cool the way that, and best podcast is him with Tim Ferriss.
Sweet. Okay.
And I think it's multiple hours. I think they've done a couple of them. I think they did one on the Lords of Strategy and then one on, because he was like a high up strategy dude with some Boehner or Bonner. I can't remember the company that, you know, like McKinsey type. Yeah, he was one of those guys. But living 80-20 way, it is kind of it's a principle, we all heard of it, but it's 80% of your results are derived from just 20% of your efforts. So you need to spend your time figuring out, you know, what are the 20% of efforts, because, and then just less is more, you know, just dive into that. Steve Jobs is really good with this. You know, he was really great at, you know, refocusing people and getting, you know, everybody called him an asshole, but that's what he did. He would just, okay, less is more. How do we get, you know, that's what he said. He opened the iPhone. You've probably remember this story. And he's like, I want the inside to be just as beautiful as the outside. And I want the inside to be just as simple, because I don't know of any other innovation that's that creative. If you really think about it,
Yeah. It,
that
it set the
more.
world on fire. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, think about it, the phones. And then to go from nothing and then to go into this beautiful iPhone. Some of the things, just real quick, focus on the vital few, identify and concentrate on the 20% of tasks, the 20% of people, 20% of activities. You know, fire your low value customers, reduce time spent on draining relationships. You know, that consumes disproportionate energy. And I have another book I'm going to talk about energy here. But simplify and eliminate. People always want clarity. Leaders, they're seeking clarity. Well, this is how you declutter your life physically and mentally.
Yeah.
Like that creates, because you only have so much time and energy. So how can you redirect it to what truly matters to you? Like put the oxygen mask on first, you know, and then you can help others. And then he has kind of a 3-step implementation process. Describe your destination. Most people don't know personal and their professional life, like what's, you know, like the end in mind, you know, Stephen Covey, but describe it. Like a lot of people have no idea what that looks like. And then figure out your 80-20 route. Like find the easiest path. Like what would be the easiest path, you know, and just brainstorm about that. It's super cool, you know, when you get into like what's most productive and what's the easiest. And a lot of people don't have that conversation.
Yeah.
So they just work their asses off for 80% of nothing and then get into action. These are like, find what makes you happy when you're working, because he talks about happiness. If you're in the 20% and you've identified that and you're happy, I mean, a lot of people call it flow state or whatever you want, but I think this, if you want to have like something that will simplify, that creates excellence in your life, that will help your relationships, that helps your health, your happiness. I think that all his books are great. I just like him. I think he's cool. And these are old too. I think this book's old. Have you read any of the 80/20s?
Yeah, I read the 80/20 Manager, I think it was, or the 80/20
that's a good
one of his. Yeah. So that was a good gateway drug into his work.
Yeah. The 80/20 Manager is pretty good too. It's like, stop freaking out. So let's go to your next book.
Yeah, well, I'll grab the same one I see as next on your stack, The Coaching Habit. I can share why I love it. You can share why you love it.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Pound for pound, one of the most impactful books I've ever read, because this book is 200 pages, tiny little book. And just the number of insights I got out of it for being such a small book was astounding. And so this book really reframed how I think about advice and what my role is as a manager. So I think it's really tempting to think, okay, you're in this manager role. I'm a director of this company, whatever your job is. And you think, oh, I'm being paid to tell people what to do. I'm being paid because I'm so smart. I've got all the answers. And this book completely destroys that. And he says, so the author's Michael Bungay Stanier. He talks about how we default way too often to advice when what we should be doing is we should be asking questions. Or studying the art of coaching, of asking really thoughtful questions that help people reach their own answers. Around the time I read this book, I actually tried it out in my life in a few different areas. So I was having a conversation with one of my friends that was sharing all these different problems he was going through. And normally I would have dove into advice Bobby mode. You know, it's like, oh, I'm going to tell you what's up and I've got all these ideas. But instead, because I had just read this book, I stepped into the questioning and curious mode. And I started to ask questions like, well, what have you tried so far? What do you think you could do next? What do you think their perspective is on the situation? And rather than it being any advice at all, it was just question. And I noticed that by asking those questions, my friend had a way deeper and richer insight of what next steps he should take in his relationship. And it wasn't from me giving advice. It was from me just asking, and he had the answer inside of him. And so that experience really changed my perspective entirely on this advice mode, and that it's okay sometimes. It's not like I should never give advice, but that I think all of us fall into that trap way too quickly and way too often. And another powerful aspect of this that I took away is that we need to be more comfortable with silence. So the author Michael Bungay Stanier talks about how when you ask an insightful question and someone's mulling it over, it's going to take them a few seconds to answer. That's normal. That's expected. And so rather than rushing to fill that silence due to insecurity that we all have, we need to sit in the silence for a little bit and let them stew on it, and then they can share an answer. So I even use that as I'm facilitating meetings at work. I'll give a few more seconds extra of silence than most people are comfortable with. And it's amazing what kind of insights you hear after you push through and you just give people a little bit more time. People unmute their mics, people share ideas, and it's not me saving them from the situation. It's letting me let them sit in the silence, and then they naturally share.
Bro, that is so good. And I love what you said about the advice. He calls it the advice monster.
He does, yeah.
So that's what I like to think of it as. I like the visual of that, the advice monster. So do you want to be the advice monster? But what I really liked about the philosophy behind this is you're teaching your employees, your team, to foster self-reliance and to solve their own problems. So you're not because it's annoying. You may be a new manager, but I had 120 employees. And I luckily, this book was a lifeline, bro, because my door was literally just people lining up.
Yeah.
I created this sense of like my ego, Jason has all the answers. And I all you got to do is I have an open door. All you need to do is just come in and ask me. So, hey boss, all day long, dude. And I couldn't get anything done. And I was just, my nerves were shot. Like it was, so when I began to do this, it was amazing. I want to get with you because we both have this book, which is funny, but I want to get with the 7 essential questions. And I want, you to talk about this. He talks about what's on your mind. Like
Yeah.
kickstart questions.
Yeah. So he goes through 7 essential questions for coaching. And the first one is exactly what you said of what's on your mind. That is a very simple question that he encourages a lot of managers to use to kick off a one-on-one, for instance. And what I love about this question is that it's so open-ended. You allow the person to share something about their personal life that's bothering them, something about their work life, something about a client that's keeping them up at night, something about them not hitting their sales quota. Whatever the thing is, it's so broad of a question to start out a conversation that it can actually be really helpful to find out, where are we going with this one-on-one today?
Right.
Where are we going with this discussion?
Mhm.
And I think if we're not doing that, it's really tempting to jump into a one-on-one and be like, Jason, here's our agenda. Let's go. Okay, tactical stuff. Boom, boom, boom. But if we start out with questions like that kickstart question, the conversation goes where it is meant to go.
Yeah, that's so good. The second question, dude, this one changed my life, and I do this one all the time. All the time. It's the AWE question.
Yeah.
Dude, and what else?
Yeah.
You think, oh, well, that sounds kind of dumb, Jason. No, no, no. It's super powerful, guys. I want you to commit to trying this. You're quiet, you listen, they're talking. Maybe they're pissed off and they're like, boss, da. I used to do this all the time. It's like, I can't believe this. And then you go, and what else? Just be quiet. It was so funny because I could do it. I could use it, get away. Sometimes I'd make a game of it to see if I could do it 3 times.
Yeah.
But a lot of times I could do it twice. And what he talks about in the book on this number 2, and what else, that's when the what else, pay attention to what they're going to say, because that's the real problem.
Right. Yeah. It's too often, I think we believe mistakenly that people are going to tell us exactly what's going on with the first things out of their mouth. But it oftentimes requires follow-up questions. It's kind of similar to an interview. If you're interviewing someone for a job and you only stick to the questions on the script and no follow-up questions, you're going to have a really bad interview. So in general, you learn more with those follow-up questions, even simple ones like, and what else?
Yeah. I do this with my girlfriend. I do this with all the relationships with my kids. I'll be, oh, and what else? This changes your life. Just start asking that, because everybody talks in superficial in the beginning. A number 3 question. I'll let you talk about this one. What's the real challenge here for you?
Yeah, for sure. Number 3 question, he calls the focus question. And so this question, what I love about it is that if you're talking to somebody about a problem going on in their life or their work, and they're really frustrated, they can't solve this thing, they're really stuck. If you ask a question like, what's the real challenge here for you? Then it kind of changes the plane of the conversation. Rather than talking about this tactical problem, we're now talking about, okay, what is it about this problem that's hard for you?
Or you, yes.
For you personally, what's the real challenge for you? And you might end up finding out that them struggling with something in the workplace actually comes back to they have a lack of confidence approaching the business.
Yes.
And then you have a conversation instead about the confidence issue that they're having and what's causing that. So you get into the deeper, real challenge behind what's going on, not the superficial stuff.
Yeah, it's so funny because a lot of times it's way simple. When you ask this question, what's the real challenge here for you? And I've done this one a lot. You'll be shocked at how simple the answer is. So I had somebody here recently and they're like, I just really hate doing this, boss. Like, this is just like, I don't want to do this. It's really challenging. And I was like, well, this is like a $15, $20 an hour job. Let's hire somebody. They were like, I was like, so this project you're not doing because of this challenge that we could hire somebody from, Philippines or anywhere, and be able to handle this and get this done for you. And you could have, a personal assistant or something. The number 4, this question, bro, is my second favorite. AWE question, and what else? This one. So I learned how to, I did this one, and at first I pissed people off. So now I have it down pat on this question. This is how good this book is, guys, that both of us are able to talk about these. Number 4 is, what do you want? But you can't say it that way. So here's how I do it. I'll say, hey, Bobby, I really appreciate you. You did this, this, and this. It's awesome. And I really value your opinion. So what are you looking at? Like, what do you want from this? And so however you word it, but I always give like a praise or tell them how much I value them, or, how smart they are. And then I ask, what do you want? And they will go right into what they want.
Yeah. What I love about this question is you're helping them paint their future reality of what they're trying to achieve. What do you want to achieve is maybe an amended way you could ask this, or what do you want next year to look like? Whatever the version of that question is you want it. It's basically a way of trying to figure out what's their ideal end state, and then how can I help get you there, which is actually the next question.
Number 5, the lazy question.
The lazy question, he calls it. How can I help? So we've probably all run into these situations where people come to us, especially in a workplace scenario, and they just dump all this stuff. Like, I'm having all these problems. I'm having all these issues. And you sit there thinking, man, what are they telling me about this for? I don't really know what I should do. So he says you can cut through the clutter by just asking, how can I help? You're still putting them in the driver's seat. They're still the ones that are going to come up with the ultimate solution, but you're asking, how can I help? How can I support? So this is a way of them then telling you, okay, well, actually, Jason, I really need you to give me a little bit of feedback on my pitch that I'm working on.
Right.
I'm nervous about this thing. So maybe I can role play with you. Okay, now we're to a potential solution. That's
Yes.
exactly what we wanted.
Yeah, strategic question number 6 is, if you're saying yes to this, what are you saying no to? So this one is really good, guys, in the sense of, and I would let people linger on this one. So I would say, hey, let's schedule another meeting. How I would do this one, I'd say like, hey, Bobby, if you're saying yes to this is great. I love everything that you're saying. This is awesome. I like your vision. I want to move in this direction. But if you're saying yes to this, what are you saying no to? So next week when we get together, I kind of want you to outline that, if you don't mind. I want to know the vision. If you could outline that, whether you want to do a presentation, however you want to do it, it's fine. But then I want to find out what you're saying no to. And this is kind of, it helps employees make deliberate commitments and ensuring that they're understanding the broader, the macro, because we get blinders on, as employees. So what choice am I going to make right now? And then what's going to happen because of it?
Yeah. Well, and so often it's not clear in our own heads what sacrifice we're making by signing on for some goal or objective.
Yes. It just sounds cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it just sounds cool. Or we know that, well, it would be good for the business if we accomplished X.
Uh-huh.
But this kind of question helps us actually peel back the layers and say, well, by trying to accomplish X, what are we sacrificing? What's the why that we're giving up? So I've actually used this question at multiple different companies when we're doing things like OKR planning. So objectives and key results.
Right.
Or like the big company goals of what we're focused on is we'll ask this question to talk about, well, if we're going to try to accomplish this, we're saying yes to that. What are we explicitly saying no to? And we actually want to make those things as explicit and say, that means in 2025, we're not working on this, we're not working on this, and we're not working on this.
Yeah, and then getting clear on those, because it's helpful to gain clarity on the no's so that we're not, because a lot of times we're not doing both. Next one is, I'll do one here real quick. John Maxwell.
Yeah.
This is leadership goal, but I want everybody to know John Maxwell has like 5,000 books that he's written. But he's the guru to me. So he helped me in my early 20s. I stumbled across the John Maxwell book, and I think he was a pastor. He's like super religious or whatever. Yeah. But I love that. I mean, I have the John Maxwell Bible. He has like a leadership Bible, and it's like it's leather. It's real pretty. You can get it, on Amazon. I have that too. How he takes biblical stories and then puts the leadership aspects in there. So even if you're not religious, John Maxwell, that's why I picked this one. But I have all of them on his, but it's leadership gold. Like you're not going to go wrong if you pick up a John Maxwell book.
No, I'm always impressed anytime I read one. Even books that based on the title, I think, oh, it's probably going to be somewhat generic advice. I dive into it and I'm just learning gem after gem and I'm underlining stuff all over the place. So every one of his books has been good that I've ever read.
Yeah. To me, it's kind of like how I would think Jesus is. Because
that's like a high bar.
I know, that's kind of how I feel about him. It's like like I said, I'm not like super religious or anything, but it's like when I read his books, like he told a story of like he was in a restaurant and the lady treated him awful. Like they were in a nice restaurant, because I mean, he's written millions of books and he had these big, huge, churches he built, everything else. So he has lots of money. So, and he golfs with like all the professional golfers and all that stuff. He's old now, like pretty old, but he still teaches all the time. He talked about he was in this restaurant, this nice restaurant, and the lady was absolutely horrific with him. And even to the point where like people were like, don't leave her a tip, like don't do nothing. And so he left a really big tip. And I remember this from my 20s and I started doing this and the lady ran out to him as he was getting out of the driveway and was crying to him and telling him like she had just lost she couldn't pay her rent and she just lost her apartment and she got evicted that day, but she knew she needed to come to work because she needed some cash for tips, and then he turned around and he looked at, this is like Jesus moments, like to me, he turned around and looked at her and he goes, I knew there was probably something up because I know that you could be way better than this. I know that you would be, you're super badass. And, and this is kind of his whole vision is his thing in every book. Like, let me find the vision. I want you to, when you're an employee of me, I'm going to turn you into a 10.
Yeah.
That's his thing, and he's so awesome.
Yeah, he's so good. Well, and one of the other low key things you always get in a John Maxwell book is a bunch of great quotes because it
Yes.
peppers all of his pages with all these quotes. And so I'm a big quotes person. I save them all in Obsidian, like we were talking about. I marshal them into like future articles that I write or whatever. And so any book of his that I pick up, it's like you get 50 plus quotes out of it.
Yeah. One of his great quotes that I remember is don't send ducks to eagle school.
Nice.
It's like, basically it's like, don't put somebody in a role that, you're forcing individuals into roles which they're unsuited for. And then I think last one, and we'll move on from this to your book, but people quit people, not companies. So then, his most famous is, everything rises and falls on leadership. And that's so true. He's the GOAT to me.
Yeah. Yeah. He's awesome.
Your book, sir?
All right. Mine is Wooden on Leadership by John Wooden.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Such a good book. It was one of the first leadership books I ever read when I started to get into nonfiction. And so this one specifically sticks with me a lot. So if anyone's unfamiliar with John Wooden, he was a famous college basketball coach for the UCLA Bruins. And yeah, most famous one of all time. He won 10 national championships, including 7 in a row. So when you think about like the modern day March Madness tournament and how hard it is to win just once, yet alone 7 times in a row, it's just astounding what he was able to help lead the team to accomplish. And what I love about this book is, sure, it's a leadership book, but it's also a life philosophy book, and it's a book about love.
Yes.
At its foremost, it's basically about loving the people around you, loving your team, and leading out of the care that you have for the people around you. So it's one of the most grounding books that I can imagine ever reading on leadership, because you read it and you just think, he just cared about these people. He wasn't trying to create college athletes. He was trying to, in his words, create young men. He was trying to create people that would go out and have successful lives. And many of them have gone and done that. They ended up having rich, successful, happy careers because of the influence that he had on them. So the other aspect in this book that is just permeates every page is he talks a lot about what success means to him. And Wooden is famous from his pyramid of success of like what goes into you having a successful life. And what does success mean? It's not money. It's not fame. It's not power. It's not status. Success is having rich relationships and defining for yourself, what do I want to have in my life?
Right.
And that is really where it's all at. And so this book actually kicked off for me what's been probably like 15-year process now of trying to define what are my rules for living? What are the rules that guide me in my life? And I have an ongoing document that I write those up every time I stumble across something that I just want to live a little bit more this direction. I just want to do a little bit more about this.
Dude, that's so great. And what I always valued in him was consistency.
Yeah.
I mean,
even in the little things.
Yeah. How many years was he the coach? Decades and decades and decades.
Yeah. Rich coaching career. And he was someone who, even every minute of practice was scripted out down to the minute. He was consistent with these little things well before other coaches were ever doing that at a collegiate level. And that's what ended up winning championships and also teaching people how to be a champion, which I think is really important.
Yeah, that's so good. Mine, the 5th discipline I talked to you about before, if I had to do this one, I would give to a leader that really wanted to understand themselves and understand their organization. This would be my second one. Have you ever read this? How?
Oh, no, I've seen it around though.
It's old. See, dude, I like old books. I don't know what.
Yeah, I love it.
I'm going to tell you why this book, this book is so, dude, you're going to text me when you read this. You're going to text me and be like, bro, that was such a good book. This is like the future. Like, you would think this book is written now, especially with AI. And the reason I'm going to tell you is this book is about how we do anything means everything. He came up with that statement.
Yeah.
So what it is, it's unprecedented transparency. And then how, as a leader, the actions and the culture of the organization, how is that? What is the authenticity, integrity? What does long-term trust with your customers look like? What is your reputation? And so he puts these as number one over product and everything else. And what I think is really interesting, this is where I was talking about with AI. This is an old book. I think it's from like the 80s or something. He talks about this. He draws between what machines can do, like machines can outthink, outprocess, outperform. When with AI, we're seeing this, and he didn't even know what AI was. You know? But what they cannot do is have character, be creative, have compassion, and have humility. So if we can have, how do we have true value in leadership? That's what the book is about. And we can have automation advances, we can do all these different things, but how do we cultivate and prioritize uniquely human qualities within our team? And this is going to be so important with all the technology that's coming out now, if that makes sense.
Oh, it's huge. Well, and on a related note, one of the biggest pivots I've had to make mentally in trying to become a better leader the last few years is not being as focused on efficiency, trying to be more focused on effectiveness.
Mhm.
And it ties into what you were talking about of like machines can be really good with efficiency. They can run a process quickly.
Right.
They can tell me how to optimize my spreadsheet in Excel. But effectiveness is doing the right things, focused on the right things,
Yes.
treating people well, being kind, being effective, not efficient is really like my main target now. And I realized that for years, I had been living in this kind of AI mindset of trying to squeeze all the juice out of things, having a more optimized one-on-one, being a little bit more transactional and fast with how I was interacting with people. But how you do anything is how you do everything, like you said. And I need to read that book, it sounds like.
Yeah, this is the cool part, and then I'll move on to you, is he unlocks for an individual or the organization from external control to internal motivation. And what does value-based self-governance look like? And how do you do that everybody has different cultures, different religions, all these different things, everybody has different beliefs, but how can we make that commitment to our shared values and purpose? And how can we create that? And then that's what empowers and inspires employees to make ethical decisions, because he talks about, ethical decisions. If they can make those decisions, if they can be empowered enough to make those decisions in a deep understanding of the organizational values.
Yeah. Love that.
So yeah, dude, and it's super well written too. The stories are amazing. Like, you've got to read that book, and then tell me how you liked it. Like, you can read.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. Next one for me is The Culture Map by Aaron Mayer. And this book, remarkably, I hadn't read until just a couple years ago. It's really big at my company, Jitasa. Our leadership team has read this. And so I read this after I joined the team, and I'm so thankful I did, because like a lot of companies out there, we have an international team. We have people in a few different countries. And this book is all about how culture and communication operate differently in different nations. One of the core, simple but powerful ideas about this book that I had never thought about in depth before is that what it means to be a good communicator differs in different countries.
Yeah.
In a country like America, good communication is oftentimes giving a ton of context and a bunch of explanation and lead up to something, so then the person's fully clued into what we're talking about. There are other countries that giving a ton of context is actually seen as bad communication, because it means you're not reading the air around you of what the audience already knows. And so this book, she goes through multiple different scales of where different countries fall on things like their leadership dynamic, how hierarchical they are,
Right.
how they give feedback to each other, how they prefer to communicate, all these different standards. And she talks about, very simply kind of breaks down, there's no right or wrong way to do this stuff. You can fall at any place on these scales, and different countries fall in different places. You just have to know, where is your country in reference to others? You have to calibrate your approach working with different nations. So this is one that if I were to start a company and have my leadership team read 5 books, this would be one of the 5.
That's so good, bro. That's so great. It reminds me of a friend of mine. He met a girl in Thailand and ended up marrying her. And we had great conversations, because her being raised in kind of more of a Buddhist, totally different than American. And
Yeah.
they were having conflicts about certain things, and then, like, in her mind, like, here's a prime example. In her mind, they got married, and so they all belonged together. Everything, all you had shared resources. So she would take out $200 and then send it to her family that was in need, an uncle that was and he's like, why are you keep giving money to, people that we don't even know? And she's like, that's what you do. Like, there's no retirement or anything like that. The older people take care of the younger, so when, and you say, well, how does that relate to work? Well, it's huge, because different people are going to act like, we want to put older people out to pasture in companies, where in Thailand, it's wisdom, and they keep people around a long time in companies as long as they'll work there, because they honor them, if that makes sense,
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's great. Any more on that book?
No, that's it.
That's good, dude. We're almost done, bro. This is great. I'll go quick. Have you read this one, High Performance Habits?
Brendan Burchard. I bought a copy, but I haven't read it. So unfortunately, I've got to dive into that one now too.
Hey, yeah, this one, I read this every year since it came out
Wow. Yeah.
because this is my end of the year to get me back on track. Like as he has 6 high performing habits. We'll go through them real quick. Seek clarity. This is kind of like, what does your best future self look like? And then you're only going to do those things. How can I be that person today?
Yeah.
And then that was amazing to me because it's like, no. Why am I? This is the 80/20 rule too. But why? This is not what my best self would be doing right now. So I'm not going to do this. I'll say no to this. I'm really good at saying no. This one was really cool too because this book he went and interviewed hundreds of the top people in the world on all different types of levels, because he has amazing access. And this is what he found, the high performance, like all the high performers in the world from sports to billionaires. He interviewed finance, hedge fund managers, everybody. And he found out these are the habits that they did.
Yeah.
This one was really good too, is that you can generate energy. So this is a habit that prioritizes mental, emotional, and physical health through consistent self-care. And one of the big things that he talks about, which I've gotten really big on, is making sure you get adequate sleep.
Yeah.
And that, I'm exercising, I'm hiking a lot, I'm eating good, I meal prep. But this is, if you want to have the desired emotional response and you want to generate energy, you have to be, so I think this was a good one. We'll skip a couple, but he talks about developing influence. And then how do you get courage? And that's a really big one in the world today. A lot of people lack clarity and they lack courage.
Yeah.
So he has like a formula of how to have courage. So this is one of my absolutely favorites because it demystified the high performance.
Yeah.
It's not, and what he says is it's not a specific kind of person. It's just a set of practices.
Yeah.
They're just consistent at doing what we all don't do. You know what I mean?
I had thought of that book as being lumped in with like The Power of Habit or Atomic Habits.
Yes.
It sounds like more so this is taking the traits of successful people in different fields and then whittling back what made them so. Is that right?
Yeah. And what they do consistently. And then, then it was kind of like, what can I find that they're doing?
Yeah.
That everybody's doing kind of the same thing, and then he found out he's like, billionaires are getting 8 hours of sleep at night.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, I talked to 10 billionaires and all 10 billionaires are getting 8 hours of sleep at night. So, that tells you something. I just think it's a powerful feedback loop on how to serve others and then also how to have high performance in yourself. It's very simple to read too. It's really, really good.
Well, really quick, it sounds a lot like Tribe of Mentors by Tim Ferriss. Have you checked that one out yet?
Yeah, this one is more emotional than that. That one's all logical to me.
Okay.
This one will like get you like, Brendan McCart has a way of motivating people. This book always pumps me up. That's why I read it at the end of the year every year.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. I've got The Path to Power by Robert Caro.
Yeah, that guy there. I've read all his books. There's 3 or 4 of those, right?
Yeah, so he's working on the 5th one, the 5th and final one of the series. And you can see how big it is too. Just a tome. So yeah, this is book 1 of a 5-book series on LBJ. And
Johnson, yes.
Yeah, I had heard about Lyndon B. Johnson in other books. He was someone who had always mystified me because it seemed like half the books that he came up in, he was the hero. Half the books he came up in, he was a villain. And I thought, this is a president who clearly is very polarizing. A lot of people loved the guy. A lot of people hated the guy. So I wanted to go to the source. And as you mentioned, Robert Caro, the biographer, legendary biographer. This book has been around for a long time.
He's won all kinds of prizes and Pulitzer Prize, all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Very well regarded book and worth the read. It's huge, but I got a lot out of this. The reason why I think it's such a great leadership book is 2 things. One is you see what LBJ was really, really good at, and that's relationships. He was so good at building rapport with people to the extent that he would have these teams that worked for him, and he was kind of an asshole to them.
Yes, he was.
But he was so motivating with the vision that he would cast that the people would do anything for him. And so you can see little glimmers of what good leadership looks like. But also the second reason I would read it is you can see a lot of what bad leadership looks like.
Yes,
So
yes.
the guy did all these crazy things. LBJ, when he was in college, actually rigged a college student body election to help him and his friends win. And so you can see that this blind ambition and pursuit of power can lead people to really, really negative places. So I loved reading it for the good. I learned a lot from his positive qualities. I also loved reading it for the bad. I learned a lot from his negative qualities and what I want to avoid as a leader. And it's one of the best books about how power operates in American politics, which is really what this biographer, Robert Caro, is all about. You know, he's written The Power Broker. He's written all these different books about power and how it manifests. And this is a great starter.
The Power Broker is amazing.
Yeah.
Dude, that's a thick one too.
It's another huge one.
Yeah, it's based the guy who made New York and New Jersey.
Yes, exactly.
What it is with the skyscrapers and all that. And he was an asshole too. Yeah, the Lyndon Johnson, dude, so good. Just, it turned I think they said that's like the best biography. There's been like people saying like he's the best.
Yeah. Yeah. This and The Power Broker are two of the top books by anyone who reads biographies.
Yeah. And I didn't put that one on there because I was kind of like, it is a leadership book, but I was kind of like, that's a biography, you know, because I have a couple of those. So we're going to have to do a whole biography thing.
I love it.
Yeah. We got just 2 more, guys, and we're done. Of course, I'm going to do a Marine Corps one. This one's called Semper Fi. What I want people to understand on this one, just real quick, this is business leadership, the Marine Corps way. In the Marine Corps, everybody kind of considers it like tough and you're number one and all that. But it's so cool. The military is so cool in the sense of we don't get a resume from somebody that went to college and is specialized in anything. You have to take somebody that's nothing and turn them in very young. And then you have to turn around and put them into a war situation. It's like the worst of the worst. It'd be like an organization hiring a high school kid to be a vice president of something. We even think it's absurd to think about that. But I knew people that were in charge of 8. I knew 22-year-olds in the Marine Corps that were in charge of 8 multi-million-dollar helicopters.
Yeah, unreal.
It was their helicopters, like their name. These are yours. Make sure they're good to go. Work with the mechanics. You have crew chiefs, and that's what they did, you know. And think about that. Oh, nobody would give just a 22-year-old that walked off the street 8 multi-million-dollar helicopters.
Yeah,
no organization would do that, but the military does all the time, and they took the train to get the person to that level really quickly. So I think we kind of look at like the military, we miss out on how great of leadership systems that they have. And this kind of demystifies it. It's a real simple type, you know, like discipline. One of the things I do like about this, Vanguard took a lot of this. You guys know Vanguard, the funds, it's like #1 funds. You know, everybody has the ETFs and the funds. It's the best way to invest if you want to invest, you know, with low fees, and, you know, you can just put it in the S&P 500 Vanguard. That's what a lot of people do. One of the things that he took from this and that the military does is they put everybody's pay out in the open. That's pretty wild, but it demystifies a lot of things. If you said, here's everybody's pay, the CEOs, but Vanguard does this. Vanguard's really, you know, they kind of take pride in that. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say that it seems like that trend is catching on. And were they one of the ones that helped start that? Were they?
This is an old book too, bro. This is like, look at the picture. I don't know if you get.
Yeah.
The oldies are goodies.
Yeah. Oh, I love old books. I've been trying to get more and more into reading older stuff, and I've been reading a lot of like ancient Stoic philosophy and all that good stuff too.
Yeah. I like reading. When I read biographies, I usually like Henry Ford. You know, I've read a lot of his, and I know there's bad and good, and everybody wants to cancel everybody all the time, but they're humans. Like, I've done some fucked up shit too. You know what I mean? Go ahead.
Yeah. Next one for me is Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke. So Annie Duke.
I haven't read this one.
Oh, it's so good. So good. So Annie Duke is a poker pro that before she got into the World Series of Poker and became this multi-millionaire poker star, she was actually a trained psychologist. So she went to school studying human psychology, and she ended up getting into poker, used all of her knowledge about how the brain works to then study the game inside and out and make millions and millions of dollars from poker.
Wow.
And in this book, she takes all those concepts and ideas and she applies them into the business world. So this book actually was one of the things that helped her pivot to actually being a business consultant, that now she's a pretty high-end business consultant. And she talks all about how to make better decisions by thinking of each decision as essentially a bet. You're making small bets every day in the way you live your life. And A bet is something that you're doing without perfect information. You don't know how it's going to turn out. You're making all these tiny little bets. And the concept that resonated most strongly for me in this book is she starts the book by talking about the Seattle Seahawks, my hometown team.
Yes.
And when they were playing the Patriots in the Super Bowl, Seattle Seahawks, final couple seconds, they're on like the 2-yard line, about ready to score and win the Super Bowl. And they have one of the best running backs in the world, Marshawn Lynch.
Right.
And instead of handing off to Marshawn Lynch to run it in for a touchdown, they decided to pass and it got intercepted. And Annie Duke uses this story to talk about how if that pass had actually been completed, they won the game, it would have been the best, most brilliant coaching call in the world, you know? But instead, because it got picked off, and only because it got picked off, it was revered as one of the worst calls of football history. But if you actually pull back the layers and you run the stats on that play throughout history, the decision to pass rather than run, it was actually a really good decision. So she uses that story as a way of talking about how we fall prey to what she calls resulting. We look at the result of a decision and we say, if it was a good result, it was a good decision. If it was a bad result, it was a bad decision. When what we should do is independently evaluate each decision. Did we make the right call based on what we knew at that time? So the book, she gives all these helpful mental models for thinking about decision-making, avoiding the perils of this whole resulting thing. And I've used it in a lot of different business scenarios when we're doing something like a retrospective on a project. And I see the group falling prey to resulting of like, well, we lost that client. We shouldn't have done this. It's like, well, based on what we knew then, that was the right judgment call. Let's separate out the decision outcome from the decision itself. But yeah, definitely check it out. I love it.
That's so good. I do a lot of trading, because I've for years and years I've gotten into investing and done tons of investing. But and there's psychology is the number one thing for trading. Like it's the same as probably what she's talking about, like fear of missing out. So, oh shit, I better buy because I don't want to miss out on the run that's going to be big, and then, or another one is I get on a hot streak. So I did this one yesterday. I did really well yesterday, had an amazing day. And then got cocky and was like, I'm going to make another. The market was really high yesterday. So I think I'm going to short the market just a little bit, but I should have been done. I should have walked away. I had an amazing day, did well. And instead, I got that itchy feeling, and I'm not much of a bet. I don't go to Vegas or anything like that. But it's what you said. That's exactly it. It's pulling the outcome out and then looking at the data and seeing it. That's so good, bro. Last book. Was that the last one?
Yeah. I've got one more and you've got one more.
Okay, cool. Oh, I just saw what that was. I already knew what that one was. That's a good one. So this is speaking of investing, this is an investing book, but it's called The Compound Effect. This changed my life for who I am as a person in understanding the magic of what compounding does. If you give, and everybody you can easily understand this. If you say, okay, I'm 20 years old and for 40 years, you could do a calculator online and do this. For 40 years, I'm going to invest in the S&P 500 and I'm going to give, $300 a month into the S&P 500 at 8%, in 40 years. And then what you see is all the money's made. Like Warren Buffett made all his money when he was past 50, that compounding part begins to work, the compounding's magic to me.
Yeah.
And this is what he talks about, it's like, how do you make small, smart choices? And then from there, can you make small, smart choices with consistency and time? And then if you do that, it's like if we worked out every day, or if we ate good every day, it's the same thing, personally, but consistency over time is the ultimate key to success, he says. So, just being consistent. And then one of the things that I really liked about the book, and then I'll hand it over to you, is what he talks about getting clear on what do I need to do to achieve this goal? And that's such a great question because it's like, what do I need to do to achieve that? Everybody has a goal, but then they don't understand. Kobe Bryant talks about this, the sacrifice to get the goal.
Yeah.
He was up at 4:00 in the morning, doing drills. Like
he beat all of his teammates to the gym every day. Yeah. Yeah. And he's Kobe freaking Bryant and he's still the first guy in the gym.
He would run lines. Like some of his coaches and stuff would say that he would run lines. Like he would just run lines back and forth like you did in high school. And he's Kobe fucking Bryant.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, so I think this one's a really good one as far as understanding as a leader that because we always want the next big thing, but basically all it is just, doing the right thing over and over and over again, day in and day out will create the compound. But this is a jump start in your income, your life, and your success. So it's a good book
I
for
love
leaders.
that. And then my last one to round out the 10 is Death by Meeting by Patrick Lencioni.
That's a
So
great
Lencioni, yeah, great
all his
business
books are great.
storyteller. He tells business books in a really different way than almost any other author, that they're all told in this fable format, that he shares a story that's a really relatable story and all these hypothetical characters that he comes up with. And then he
Mhm.
unpacks what happened in the story. And in Death by Meeting, the book isn't a call to not have meetings. The book is a call to have better meetings. And he talks about how you should have different meetings for different types of things in your business's needs. And he breaks down exactly what it looks like to have a good weekly team meeting, to have a good quarterly offsite, to do great one-on-ones. And this book really changed my perspective on meetings of they shouldn't actually be something that you're looking at and trying to avoid. He compares them to almost like an athlete prepares for a game, a business person prepares for a meeting. This is when you get paid the big bucks. You're making decisions in a meeting that impact maybe hundreds of employees or thousands of clients or millions of dollars in revenue. You make those dollars in the meetings that you have and the decisions that you make within them. So loved that book. It's a great reframe that gives a bunch of practical tips about how to structure meetings. And it's also not dry and
No, none of his books are boring. They all suck you in, all of them.
yeah. They all read really fast too. For being a 250 pages or whatever, you breeze through it
Yeah, yeah,
super quick.
it's amazing. Well, Bobby, speaking of amazing, this has been awesome. We went through 20 books. That's
Love
crazy.
it.
This is super cool. I want people to be able to, how can they know more about you? I know your website. Can you talk a little bit more about what you do on the website and kind of your writing?
Yeah, for sure. So at my core, I help people develop into managers that are confident and feel good about what they're doing with their teams. And so a lot of the things I write about, a lot of the articles that I share online are all about that. It's helping teach and train employees and managers. So you can connect with me on bobbypowers.com, or if you use Substack, which I love Substack, just got on there a few months ago, you can check out my Leader and Learner publication. So Leader and Learner or bobbypowers.com. And I would love to have you pop on there and say hey and let me know what you're reading as well.
That's perfect. Dude, this was awesome. Thank you so much for your time and for those books. Funny that we had one. We probably would have had, I probably would have picked two other ones that you had. So that shows you like this is a good list. And I'll put them all in the show notes with the links and stuff so everybody can purchase them. So thank you guys.
Yeah, love it. Thanks, Jason.